people might ask, how does the Holy Spirit speak different to us as autistics? And I think this is a really good question, and a lot of it is very subtle. I think we need to understand that Jesus is incarnate once in Galilee, but he enculturates himself into every culture. We know he was probably Middle Eastern, but in Africa, they likely have images of Jesus as an African. And if you look at the Sacred Heart and the Immaculate Heart that I have behind me, they look pretty close to, my heritage, where I'm from, Northern Europe. I'm Irish, Scottish, and German. They don't look Middle Eastern. Why? Because these images are enculturated to the kind of culture that I come from. Another way we can see this is in language. If I go to Mass in Spanish, the priest might say, Jesús dijo, Yo soy el camino y la verdad y la vida. Did Jesus say those words? Probably not. But Jesus didn't say, I am the way, the truth, and the life either, even though those are the same words in Spanish and English, translated from what Jesus probably said in Aramaic. We properly enculturate what he says. When my friend in Brazil prays, he hears Jesus' voice in Portuguese, but I hear it in English. Jesus adapts himself to each person. In adapting himself to each person, Jesus doesn't just adapt to our language, but also our neurology. Words mean the same to others in English. We say dog, it means dog to me, it means dog to another English speaker. But a lot of nonverbal communication is very different among us autistics or among neurotypicals. People often think autists are just bad at reading nonverbal communication, but interestingly, we're significantly better at reading other autistic people's nonverbal communication. So the challenges between the autistic and the non-autistic group, well, within each of those groups, we can actually communicate nonverbally pretty well. And so with that, if I'm going to speak to God in an autistic way, and he wants to speak back to me, the most effective way for him to use is going to be to speak in an autistic manner. Not to speak in a neurotypical manner. He says, come to me as you are. He doesn't say, come to me and fake neurotypicality. No, he says, come to me as you are. And he wants to communicate to me as I am. And it's hard at times to understand what that might be. We can all see how autistic communication is different. And we can think of how God would communicate to an autistic person similarly. And I think a way to talk about it is kind of by analogy. If I'm giving a talk to a whole big group, I can invoke a kind of vague emotional effect, or I can tell a story and communicate something. But if I call up my mom on the phone, in a lot fewer words, I can communicate so much more. Well, why is that? That's because that relationship I have with my mom, those kind of connections, all that history and everything else. And in the same way, when I'm praying, I don't have to consciously think about, okay, what are the neurotypical modes of communication so I can communicate with God, but I just communicate as I am. I can communicate so much more, and he can communicate so much more to me as well. I don't need to filter him through the neurotypical filter. And he presents me an image in an autistic way. For example, a lot of neurotypicals tend to go from the general to the specific. If you say dog, they think of like a vague dog, and then they think of specific dogs. Whereas we tend to think specific to general. So we think of a bunch of dogs, and then we think to the general idea. And the kind of image or the mode of communication God gives is going to match that, because he wants to communicate to us. He loves us beyond anything we can imagine. And so he's going to, and he loves us as we are, so he's going to communicate in that same way to us. So let's listen to his voice. Let's listen to the Holy Spirit speak to us as autistics and really let him transform our lives. So I'm hoping to start back up a little more frequently than I have been while I was writing my doctoral thesis and things. You see this, you can subscribe. You can also order the book, which is coming out this month. And the links is going to be in the description for the book.